A big welcome to everyone. So glad you could be here in the room with us today. And for those of you who are online as well, a big welcome to you. We are in a season of generosity, of focusing on what it means to be rich. So just to give a quick summary of where we have been. Last week we started by looking at this idea that when we talk about be rich, we're not talking about getting more wealth for us. We're actually talking about the responsibility that we have for those of us who have extra, for those of us who have above and beyond, for those of us that have everything we already need and a little bit more. The responsibility for us to be generous with what we have so that others may benefit. We looked at 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we looked at Paul's instruction to Timothy, talking about commanding everyone who is rich in this current age to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share, which instinctually we all look at and go, yeah, of course. But then we think about it and we're like, but I don't want to share my stuff because I'm aware of what I have. And we don't think of ourselves as rich, but when we look down and we compare ourselves, we normally compare ourselves up, right? We look at the wealth we have, the finances we have, the situation we have, and we think to ourselves, I have enough for me. I don't know if I can share much for someone else, but those people over there, they've got more than I've got. But at the same time, while you're sitting there going, I think I'm here and those people over there can be generous, there's someone down there looking at you going, but you could be generous as well. So what we're doing over this season together is looking at what it means to be rich, to manage the resources we have so that it's not all about me, but that others may benefit, others may be lifted up. And today we're going to zoom in on what it means to serve. So last week we looked at give. Today we're looking at what it means to serve. And we're going to have a look at one of the most famous pieces of the Bible when it comes to what it means to serve. It's at the moment where Jesus washes the disciples' feet. But before I get to that, let me just quickly share about my week. I had a really good week this week because I got to go and meet a whole bunch of new people. Now, can I remember all of their names? Heck no. But I remember the faces and the conversations and everything. What I got to do this week, which was pretty cool, is I got to go and hang out with a lot of other not-for-profits and a bunch of CRCs, so community resource centres, which are all throughout the country. I didn't know who they were and what they're up to, but I do now. And I got to hang out with a bunch of neighbourhood centres and family centres. And I was at this event that was run by an entity called Link West, which oversees about 150 of these centres that are everywhere. And I got to meet all of these amazing people. And what was so interesting talking to everybody, talking to all of these amazing community centres that not only lift up volunteers and make community life better, but they make sort of the fabric of those communities feel the way that they do by the way they care and love and serve their communities so well. And as I was chatting to everyone there, a couple of themes emerged. One was, thank goodness for volunteers. But the second thing that emerged was, there's not enough volunteers. People were saying people don't want to serve anymore. As conversation after conversation, talking to all of these rural centres, going as much as they want to be able to provide good services to the community, people don't want to serve like they used to. The other thing that came up a lot was there's never enough funding, right? They were bemoaning the way that grants are done and bemoaning the way that the funding's there. So that was very evident as well. So thank goodness for the volunteers we have. Wouldn't it be great if we had more volunteers? And we all need more money. And as the famous saying goes, how much money do we all need? A little bit more. How much do we need? Just a little bit more. Whatever you have, it's always that idea of, if I just had a little bit more. But what I learnt as I was chatting to all these centres was the power of people who use their time, their energy, their skill set to serve in the community, and what a gift that is. Not only to them as they serve, and for everyone here who says, yes, I give time during the week to different organisations. It might be here at church. It might be things within our local community. I'm sure you can say, it feels good. It feels good for those of us who get to serve. There's something just that feels great, but the community benefits as well. And one of the things when it comes to church world, when it comes to those of us that say we follow Jesus, we should be even better in this space of serving. People everywhere want to serve just because it's the right thing to do. And there's something inside of us that wants to connect. But I think that for those of us who say, I follow Jesus as part of what I do, we have a big example from the life of Jesus that demonstrates that serving is just meant to be part of our DNA. And I'm not talking about serving on a Sunday. Not everyone has the ability, the capacity, or the desire to serve here, but serving somewhere. Making all of your time about you doesn't end well. We need to be able to make it about others as well. If you've got your Bible, you can go to John chapter 13, 1 to 17. I had a bit of a hectic morning, as you can probably tell. I know what's happening, maybe. So I didn't get it up on the slides. I'm really sorry about that. So if you've got your Bible, or you can Google it, it's John 13, and we're going to be in chapter 1 to 17. So just to set it up, John was a follower of Jesus who wrote a document that tells us all about Jesus' life. Now, what's interesting about John, which is different to the other authors of our New Testament, is especially those who were the original disciples of Jesus, the ones who followed him day after day. John's life ended differently than everyone else's. He lived a long life. He got to live for many, many years. And I think it reflects in the tone and what he chooses to talk about in the letter that he wrote. A lot of the other letters, the other gospels are written at the time very quickly, first-hand accounts, and people were, for their faith, dying very young. But John lived a long, long, long time. And it's interesting to me that he keeps coming back to these ideas of love and these ideas of forgiveness. And he keeps coming back to these themes that I think have come from a deep, long following of Jesus. What's also interesting to note is that in John chapter 13, he records this act of Jesus washing the the disciples' feet, but he doesn't record the Last Supper. And there's different reasons for that commentators say, but I think what John was trying to emphasize at the end, right before Jesus went to the cross, was the servant-hearted nature of Jesus and the example that is to us. So this is what it says. It says, just before the Passover festival, Jesus knew the time was coming and he was about to leave this world and go back to his Father. The evening meal was in progress, and Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, was already set to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew the Father had put everything under his power, that he had come from God, and he was now going to be returning to God. So in this last moment, before he goes through and unloads all of this amazing teaching on his disciples and everything, he gets up from his meal. He took off his outer clothing. He wrapped a towel around his waist. He poured water into a basin, and then he got down and he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Simon Peter came up to him and said, "You cannot wash my feet." Now, we might think this is already a strange setting, right? Like, how many of us have got a foot washing within the last day or two? We have shoes on. At the time, when you're eating a meal back then, it was quite low to the ground. You were walking around, feet were quite dirty. And if you were in a house of well-to-do people and they had servants, they would send their servants to come and wash your feet. And what's interesting is that this is such a lowly job. If you were a Jewish servant, so you're part of the family of God and you're a Jewish servant, you didn't have to do this. This was for the Gentiles. This was for the non-Jewish servants. This was for the low of the low. And Jesus, the teacher, the one who's in charge of all, he gets up and he washes their feet. Simon Peter says, "You're never going to wash my feet." And Jesus says, "Yes, I am." Here's where I want us to just focus in for 1 second. The love that Jesus demonstrated in that moment of washing his disciples' feet was a demonstration of service, that no matter who you were, no matter what position you held, no matter how much power you had in any given situation, your role was to steward that responsibility to serve the people you love and who are underneath you. Jesus, in one moment, demonstrated for the entire world that it is possible for true power to be married with true humility, and that service can be the outworking of those who are responsible with being in charge. So the message for those who have no power is this: the God of the universe, the one who is in charge of everything, the one who looks after it all, he loves you so much that he is willing to serve you. And for those of us that follow Jesus now, we remember we were first served by him. And as a result, in our families, in our workplaces, and as we live out our lives, we are responsible to serve those around us. The example of Jesus is that no matter who you are, no matter what you have something where you can serve and love the people who have been entrusted to you. So when we think about serving here as a church, I want our community and I want those inside these walls, I want everyone to know that we are a church that takes serving seriously. Not because it's just a good thing to do, but because it was demonstrated by the one that we follow. If you're a follower of Jesus, this is not maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Jesus is like, this is what I did, this is how you should be. But for those of you that don't follow Jesus, for those of you who say, no, I'm not really into the whole Jesus thing, you should be very thankful that this is what Jesus demonstrated, because churches, when we do what we do properly and well and loving and healthily, churches and church community and people who follow Jesus should be generous and willing to serve. Not because we're great people, but because that's what Jesus did for us.